How dare you behave like that when I'm begging like this? You should just keep quiet and listen to me. The person who said this to me was my husband, George, whom I always thought was on my side. We worked together and saved up to build a new house. Unexpectedly, George's parents also moved into our new home. I tried my best to ensure that the whole family could live together harmoniously, but I was treated harshly by my in-laws, felt my limit, and sought support from my husband. My name is Emily. I got married at 27 and work part-time at a supermarket. George is 3 years older than me and does not have a large income, but he works hard every day. Ever since we got married 7 years ago, we had a dream of building a new house. George is a typical office worker, and since I'm a part-timer, our combined income only allows us to save a little at a time. Still, we managed to save a certain amount from our monthly salaries and consulted with real estate agents numerous times about whether we could get a mortgage approved. After many trials and efforts, we recently finally started to see concrete progress towards getting a mortgage approved. It seems like the discussions about the mortgage are progressing smoothly, and it's time to carefully decide on the details of the house's interior and design. Yes, we need to think about the children's room and plan the layout of the kitchen and living room. My husband and I were filled with excitement as we imagine our life in the new home together. I'm really looking forward to starting our new life. As we had these conversations, our plan for the new house gradually took shape. The sense of achievement and joy we felt during this process was indescribable. While the house was being built, George and I visited the construction site together numerous times to check on the progress. The time spent discussing whether to get new furniture and appliances for the new house and exploring various options was exciting. Hey, how about we take this opportunity to move into the new house and get a bigger refrigerator? If our family grows in the future, we might need a larger, family-sized fridge. That's true. Our family structure might change, and a bigger fridge would be better. We began considering buying a refrigerator with more functional space in anticipation of a growing family. That's right. And I've been thinking about the children's room. Is it too early to prepare a baby bed and toys? What do you think? My husband and I discussed our future family plans and preparations for the children's room. It might be a bit early, but it's not bad to prepare systematically. For now, we could keep the children's room as an empty space and start preparing when necessary. Indeed, there's no need to rush decisions. How about we visit a nearby electronics store tomorrow and take our time to look at various products? Yes, that's a wonderful idea. Let's discuss and carefully choose what we need and what's best for us. As we engaged in these pleasant conversations, it felt like time flew by, and before we knew it, our long-awaited home was finally completed. That day, we stood in front of our splendid new home, filled with hope for the future and the happy days to come, contemplating the infinite possibilities it offered. While talking to the real estate agent, a moving truck from a delivery company suddenly stopped in front of our new home. We went to greet them, but were surprised by who stepped out. It was George's parents, my in-laws. Why were they here? Perhaps they had planned a special surprise, and while I was momentarily confused, I looked at George's expression. He approached his parents with a warm smile. He must have known in advance that they were coming. Feeling a bit perplexed, I gently asked George about the situation. George, if you knew your parents were coming, it would have been nice to tell me in advance. I was really surprised. George, looking somewhat apologetic, replied calmly, "Sorry, Emily, I completely forgot to mention it. But now that we'll be living together, I think it's good for us to be more open and not too reserved with each other." What are you saying? Surely, you don't mean we'll be living together with your parents? I must have forgotten to mention it. They're just leaving their stuff today and will come to stay with us in 3 days. Let's go and greet them together. Wait, I didn't hear about this. This is our house, isn't it? Why would you make such an important decision on your own? I'm really sorry. But for now, my parents are waiting, so let's at least go greet them. Even though George urged me to greet my in-laws, I was still in shock after hearing the news, and their words didn't sink in. My in-laws spoke to me with a big grin on their face, but I couldn't comprehend the reason behind it. George, Emily, congratulations. What a wonderful home you have. Yes, it's exciting to think about living together. Did you already know you were going to live with us starting today? I would have appreciated even a word of consultation with me beforehand, I asked quietly but with clear dissatisfaction. Emily, they came all the way here to celebrate our new home. What's the point of bringing that up now? We no longer have the option of not living together, so we have to accept it and move forward, George said, trying to reason with me gently. I was not informed until this moment that my in-laws had canceled their previous living arrangements as our house plan progressed. Faced with the fact that they were now homeless, I lost my words to argue. While I was still in shock, everyone entered the new house, and the conversation about room assignments began. I intend to give this room to my parents. What do you think? George showed us into the room we had planned for our future child. Wait a minute, George, are you serious? This is the room we agreed to make into a nursery after so many discussions. I couldn't hide my anger. That's right, Emily. But after talking to my parents, we decided they would use this room, George explained calmly. Why would you make such an important decision without consulting me? I said, outraged. I'm sorry, Emily. From now on, we'll make sure to discuss important matters with the whole family. Please forgive us just this time. I'm truly sorry. My in-laws apologized, and I was left speechless. 3 days passed, and my in-laws actually moved in. Despite my deep distrust of my husband and in-laws, I realized it was too late and reluctantly started life together. This new life was a series of difficulties. My in-laws did not help with any housework. When I returned home from work, they were relaxing in the living room watching TV. The house was always a mess. Cooking, cleaning, and laundry were all my responsibilities. Even with chores for 2, it was challenging, but for 4, it was overwhelming. Emily, there's a pile of laundry to do, so please take care of it today. And when you hang the clothes, make sure to smooth out the wrinkles. Emily, it would be helpful if you could prepare dinner and the bath earlier. I want to bathe by 6 p.m., and I prefer the food to be a bit saltier. Faced with such detailed requests daily, I endured the first week. But the thought of this continuing made me unable to bear it any longer, and I decided to have a serious talk with my in-laws. Father, Mother, I have something to discuss with you. I'm questioning why all the housework is left to me. I have a job too, and I would like my husband to share some of the chores. If you have time since you're retired, could you please help with some housework? What are you saying? Housework is the wife's duty, and it's unacceptable to talk to your in-laws that way. I used to handle all the household chores myself, so it's just natural we expect you to do all the housework too. Overwhelmed by their strong tone, I couldn't respond. That night, after my husband returned home, I talked to him about what had happened. Today, I suggested that your parents help with some of the chores, but it upset them greatly. Honestly, handling chores for 4 people is really tough. I need your help. Are you serious? Considering the hours and income we bring in, it's only natural for you to handle the chores. How could you push them onto my parents? Use this opportunity to learn the basics of housework from my mom. The moment I heard my husband's words, I strongly felt that I had no allies in this family. That's when I decided to leave the house. The next day, on my day off, I planned to leave before dawn and packed everything overnight. In the morning, I went to the living room to talk to my husband, and all 3 of them were already gathered there. I took this opportunity to express my decision to them. I have something to tell you. I find it difficult to continue living together as we have been. Therefore, I have decided to return to my parents' house. What's wrong? We've talked and reflected on yesterday's matter. Can you forgive us? Emily, I'm truly sorry. From now on, let's cooperate and share the household chores. I went too far yesterday. Sorry. Is that so? Perhaps I was a bit impulsive as well. Let's try to fix our household together as a family. After receiving apologies from George and my in-laws, it seemed for a moment that the situation was resolved. However, their attitude did not change that day, or did it the day after, breaking their promise. Disappointed by this, I decided once again to leave the house. I can't stand this anymore. Since there is no change, I'll actually return to my parents' house. I declared and left. I was utterly fed up with the commotion they were causing in the neighborhood. Has anyone seen my wife? We can't get in touch with her. Emily, where are you? Please, come back. Could she have encountered some incident? Let's report it to the police. Unable to leave them in their uproar, I reluctantly returned home. Despite this, their behavior showed no signs of improvement, and feeling my mental and physical limits, I secretly left the family again. The next day, staying at my parents' house, I received a call from an unknown number. It was from the police, informing me that a missing person report had been filed by them, which was shocking. I explained the situation to the police, but they said they couldn't intervene in domestic affairs and advised me to try to have a calm discussion, which I couldn't ignore, so I returned to that unbearable everyday. One day, struggling to endure daily life, my mother-in-law had invited her sister to our house. Upon returning home, unaware of this, my mother-in-law rushed me to prepare dinner. Emily, welcome back. Sorry for the sudden request, but my sister is visiting. Could you make dinner a bit special? She's expecting something different from our usual menu. I'm unprepared for this sudden request. If you had informed me earlier. Enough with the excuses. Just go shopping and don't keep our guest waiting. During this conversation, my mother-in-law's sister seemed to sense something from our exchange. She mentioned that she was told we had a very close relationship and there were no issues between my mother-in-law and me, and she was invited to taste the exceptional cooking she had heard about from my mother-in-law. Hearing this, it was only natural for her to be confused by the tension between us. Though I had no intention of cooperating with my mother-in-law's pretense, I couldn't be rude to her sister who came over, so I reluctantly started preparing the meal. I'll manage with what we have. Why would you do that when my sister has come to visit? Go shopping now and prepare something proper. You lack planning skills, and while we're chit-chatting here, the chores are piling up. I can't stand this anymore. Why do I have to listen to all this? If you're not going to help, at least stay quiet. Reaching my limit, I retorted, forgetting my mother-in-law's sister was there. I went to George's room and relayed everything. Hey, why is your mother so arrogant? Try talking to her to calm her down. When we have a guest, it's the wife's duty to provide appropriate hospitality. Why are you talking to my mom like that? Your behavior is the problem. That's why she set up this situation as part of your education. If you're so dissatisfied, you're free to leave this house. While saying this, George showed me the divorce papers he had pulled out from somewhere. You say that, but you haven't signed it yet. You would be in trouble without me, wouldn't you? It's all just talk. Really, you never know when to keep your mouth shut. Whether you're here or not doesn't matter to me. Look, I've signed them, so please leave now. The moment I got the divorce papers, I was so happy I could have jumped for joy. I immediately signed the divorce papers and packed all my valuables into a bag. Our heated argument was loud enough for my mother-in-law, her sister, and unexpectedly, my father-in-law, who had returned, to hear everything. As I tried to leave, my in-laws, realizing they would be in trouble without me to handle the chores, desperately tried to stop me. Emily, what's wrong? Calm down. Let's talk it over with everyone. I'm really sorry about what happened earlier, Emily. George, you should apologize too. Just leave her be. It was pointless trying to teach her anything, so let her go. George's harsh words had no effect on me now that I had the divorce papers in hand. Ignoring all three of them, I left the house with just one bag and headed straight to the city hall to file for divorce. Once the papers were accepted for processing, I finally felt like I was freed from those nightmare-like days. I went directly to my parents' house to talk about what had happened and my plans for the future. I shared my thoughts on suing the three of them, starting a new life on my own, close to my job, and seeking a bit of support from my parents for this transition. They warmly welcomed me, appreciated my efforts, and offered words of comfort. I resolved not to cause any more worry or trouble for my parents and to completely sever ties with those three. A week later, I went to the house where I used to live with George and his parents, who were not there, leaving just George and me to talk. I thought you'd come back soon, but you're quite persistent. I'm willing to forgive you if you apologize. What do you say? I didn't come here to apologize. I've handed in the divorce papers, so I can say we are strangers now. Please don't act so superior. I'm going to ask for alimony and a division of property. You came back just to act all high and mighty? You've caused me trouble and now you're demanding money? What are you planning? From now on, I'll avoid direct contact with you all and handle everything through a lawyer. All your actions towards me have been recorded in videos and diaries. I'm prepared to take legal action if you refuse to pay. I came here today just to inform you of that. Goodbye. After finishing what I had to say, I ignored George's attempt to argue and left. Later, I learned about George and his family's situation through my lawyer. It seemed that after filing for divorce, they planned to stay in the previous residence. But that plan fell through due to the significant mortgage on the newly built house. George owned the house, and during our life together, George's salary went towards daily expenses, while my salary was allocated to the mortgage and other expenses. After I left, their financial situation worsened. George sought support from his parents, who had sold their previous home, but it seemed they did not use the proceeds for living expenses. Their spending vastly exceeded expectations, with expensive cars, brand bags, and frequent golf outings, resulting in almost no funds left. As a result, George struggled with the monthly mortgage payments. After receiving several reminders from the real estate agent, George, after consulting with his lawyer, decided to sell the newly built house to repay the mortgage. However, the house sale process did not go smoothly. After I left, the house became a mess, resulting in widespread dirt and damage, with tobacco odors and stains, requiring significant cleaning costs. The house was eventually sold, but the amount was significantly lower than expected. With the remaining mortgage debt and the alimony payments to me, George ended up with a substantial debt. Hearing this from the lawyer and learning that George and his parents were trying to make ends meet in a cheap apartment, I felt a moment of sympathy but quickly dismissed it. Considering their past actions, I felt this was only natural considering how they treated me. Once the alimony payments were completed, I planned to completely cut ties with them. However, one day George unexpectedly showed up at my apartment where I was living alone. Despite changing my contact information and not sharing my address, he managed to find me. How did you find out my address? I haven't told anyone. I tracked you down using your workplace as a starting point. I really needed to talk to you. What? That's really creepy. I have nothing more to discuss with you. Please leave. Don't say that. Please listen to me for a bit. I beg you. I want to start over. Without you, I'm truly lost. Do you understand what you're saying? Who would want to get remarried with you? Leave now. Please. You're the only one we can rely on now. George then shared his current dire situation with me. He had accumulated a huge debt due to the mortgage and the alimony he owed me. That stress led him to gambling and drinking, increasing his debts even further. His attitude, seeking my sympathy, made it clear that he was trying to use me, and I felt no compassion for them, so I decided to send him away immediately. I understand the situation, but I have no intention of supporting you. Please leave. I'm begging like this, and you still won't help. You're pretending to be humble now, but in reality, you're just trying to use me, right? I can't trust you anymore. Goodbye. As I was about to close the door, George suddenly grabbed my arm, showing his true colors. How dare you behave like that when I'm begging like this? You should just keep quiet and listen to me. Suddenly, George's attitude changed drastically as he started yelling. Hearing the commotion, a neighbor called the police, and the situation was somehow resolved. I was deeply concerned that they knew where I lived. Unfortunately, my fears were confirmed when George found out my address, and his parents also came to my house. I talked to them through the locked door. There's nothing to discuss. Please leave. Emily, please. We have no one else to turn to. We were family once, so I'm asking for your support. Emily, help us. We're at a dead end. Let's live together as a family again. Stop always asking for favors. I won't engage with you, and if you continue to make a scene, I'll call the police. How can you say such things to your former in-laws? Don't you have any gratitude or sense of duty towards us? That's right. That's right. Come out here. You should just do as we say. While saying this, they banged on the door violently and kept ringing the doorbell, almost breaking it. Feeling overwhelmed, I finally decided to call the police. After the police took them away, I had the chance to talk to an officer. I explained the entire situation and my current circumstances, and they subtly suggested that I move. It was something I had been considering since George's visit, and I began to seriously contemplate moving. I contacted my parents and decided to stay with them for the time being. I was grateful to my parents for welcoming me with open arms. I also explained the situation to my workplace and requested an adjustment in my working hours, which was readily accepted. I was thankful for their understanding and felt fortunate to have such a supportive workplace. After moving and having my working hours adjusted, I no longer worried about the three of them knowing my location and started enjoying peaceful days. Additionally, my work at the supermarket, where I was employed part-time, was recognized, and I was invited to join the launch of a new branch as a full-time employee. Since the new job is in a different area, I have no concerns about encountering the three of them and feel fulfilled in my work every day. With the salary increase, I've been able to smoothly repay the money I borrowed from my parents, who are very pleased with my current situation. Meanwhile, from what I've learned through my lawyer, George and his parents' situation hasn't improved. The apartment where the three of them, incapable of handling household chores, live is in disarray, causing complaints from neighbors. They continue to struggle with hard labor while unable to break their habits of gambling and drinking, leading to increasing debt and a continuation of their difficult lives. I remind myself that one's actions always return to you, and I'm determined to maintain my fulfilling life by working hard every day. Can you go back to your parents' home? My parents are going to live in this house. What are you talking about? I don't understand. I truly didn't understand what my husband meant. Even though I contribute $2,000 for monthly living expenses, what will he do without me? However, this turned out to be a good thing for me. The next day, I quickly contacted a recycling company. If my husband was plotting something, I had my ways too. What do you think you're doing? Huh? It's none of your business how I dispose of my own belongings, right? I am Liana, a 32-year-old office worker. I married Danny, my husband, quite recently. We met at a group dating event. He approached me aggressively, and I gradually became attracted to him, which led to us dating. Our relationship went smoothly for about 2 years, and then he proposed to me. As I was in my early 30s and hoping to marry, I was very happy when he proposed. I immediately said yes, and we decided to get married. Then we quickly planned to greet each other's parents. When I introduced him to my parents, they were relieved to see he was a decent office worker. Please take good care of our daughter. Yes, I will definitely make her happy. I was happy when he said that confidently. He was fun and considerate, so I thought our married life would be enjoyable. After that, we went to greet his parents. I don't want to remember much about that day. Right from the introduction, his parents didn't seem impressed. Nice to meet you. I'm Liana. Danny, welcome back. It must have been tough walking in the heat, right? I have some cold drinks prepared. Sit down and drink. Oh, I didn't realize you brought a friend, haha. Mom, I brought Liana, my fiancé, today. Oh, sorry, haha. You're so lucky to marry Danny. His mother suddenly said that. Ignoring my greeting at our first meeting, I wondered if she was making fun of me. Then we were led to the living room, and I greeted his father, but he didn't respond at all, just talking to Danny. Without mentioning our marriage, they talked about family matters only they understood for over an hour, leaving me out of the conversation. So, I ended up leaving without having much conversation with his parents. Since his parents were so cold, I asked Danny if he had told them about our intention to get married. I did, he said, but their attitude was too unfriendly. I felt really uncomfortable. That's why I didn't want a meeting between both of our families. Feeling very anxious, I eventually arranged one. I had already warned my parents about his parents. Thanks to that, my parents managed the conversation well. His parents were still unfriendly, but my parents asked questions that drew them out, praising their answers, which seemed to put them in a better mood, and they became more talkative. As a result, the first meeting over a meal ended pleasantly, and I felt relieved. I was truly grateful to my parents for trying so hard for their daughter. Later on, we had our wedding without any issues and finished our honeymoon, starting our life together. We submitted our marriage registration, and we officially became husband and wife. Then, our married life began. Even the trivial things in married life felt enjoyable. Since we hadn't lived together before marriage, everything was fresh. I felt enveloped in happiness every day. I'm home. Welcome back. I made dinner. Oh, what's on the menu today? It's your favorite, Danny. It's steak. Steak. Awesome. I'll get changed and come right away. We enjoyed our married life every day. Although both of us were working, Danny sometimes cooks simple meals, which I appreciated. I had often heard that wives usually bear the brunt of household chores after marriage, but thankfully, that wasn't the case for me. I felt really glad to have married him. That was how we were living a happy married life. However, about a year after marriage, Danny's attitude changed drastically and became cold. At first, I didn't notice, but our conversations began to dwindle. Today, something happened at work. Are you listening to me? I guess so. What kind of response is that? Indeed, Danny completely ignored my stories, and our conversations gradually faded. During meals, he hardly spoke, and the silence grew. Then, perhaps frustrated with this situation, Danny started working overtime more often and returned home considerably late. He also began to go out for drinks more often, coming home drunk. I couldn't understand why our relationship had suddenly deteriorated. Had I done something to upset Danny? Or had his feelings for me cooled off just after a year? Thus, my days were filled with anxiety and confusion. Danny was coming home late, and we hardly had any proper conversations. I wondered if our relationship would continue to deteriorate and lead to divorce. Amidst these thoughts, one day, he suddenly said to me, "Hey, how about we go out to eat somewhere today?" What happened all of a sudden? No, I was just thinking we haven't really had a good talk recently. Work has been busy, and I've been feeling down. Sorry for being cold. Danny apologized like that. It's okay. Well, I was quite worried, but I forgive you since you apologized. Thank you. I'll be more careful from now on. I was happy that Danny apologized. If things had remained in a bad state, we might have ended up divorcing. That day, we went to a restaurant and enjoyed delicious food and drinks. We had a great time talking about various things, just like before we were married. I thought we might be able to enjoy a happy married life like before. After that, Danny started valuing our time together, and it felt like we went back to our old days. He came home early, and our conversations during meals were enjoyable. So, I was completely reassured. In the midst of those days, Danny made a suggestion. There's a new apartment building coming up that seems convenient for commuting and has a lovely interior. How about moving there? He said that and showed me the brochure for the property. Indeed, it was a very nice place, as Danny described. At that time, we lived in the apartment I used to live in alone. The commute from the apartment was all right, and it was spacious enough for two. Our home appliances were relatively new, so we decided to start our married life in this apartment. However, now that it's been about a year and a half since we got married, it might be time to consider moving, especially if we plan to have a family in the future. The rent for the apartment Danny suggested is $1,400 per month. It's quite expensive, but if we each contribute $700 and save on groceries, we should be able to afford it. I agreed with Danny's proposal and hurried the contract procedures. A few months later, we moved into the completed apartment. It was spacious with many rooms, beautiful, and seemed very comfortable to live in. Danny really liked it and seemed satisfied. It was an extremely comfortable and pleasant place. Equipped with a complete kitchen, I could enjoy cooking every day. Danny and I were spending joyful time together in our new home. However, about a month later, something bothered me. Hey Danny, about this month's rent, your part hasn't been deposited into our joint account, right? Really? Oh, I thought I had transferred it. There's a deadline for payment, so please transfer it soon. Sorry, I thought I had already transferred it and ended up spending on other things. Can you cover this month for me? I'll pay it back soon, sorry. Please make it quick. I paid the full rent from my salary then. It was the first time I saw Danny not keeping such a promise, so I thought he would pay me back soon. However, after 2, then 3 weeks passed. Danny still hadn't paid me back, and it was already time for the next rent payment. Hey, you haven't paid me back for last month's rent yet. Do I have to pay the full $1,400 this month? That's unreasonable. But we agreed to split the rent each month. Well, we made a promise, but it's not easy, right? No, it's a promise, so don't make excuses and just keep it. I'm working hard every day, so don't be so harsh. Working hard? If he was working hard, he should cooperate in paying the rent for us as a couple. Then, can you set aside the rent from your salary in advance? All right. I wonder if he really understood. My trust in Danny dropped significantly. Besides, I was paying for all living expenses, including food and utilities. I was saving as much as possible. So even with rent, the total came to about $2,000. But it's hard to pay all that with just my salary. However, Danny never paid the rent again. It turned out he only paid for the first month after we moved. One day, something unforgivable happened. It was on my holiday when Danny was out for work, and I was cleaning the house. As I was vacuuming around the house, I found something in Danny's room. Did he have luxury brand clothes? Danny had bought luxury brand clothes without my knowledge. Clothes he had never worn in front of me. So, I didn't even know he had bought them. But what upset me the most was that he bought such expensive items while not paying the rent or living expenses. As soon as Danny came home, I confronted him. Hey, what is this? It's my clothes. What's the problem? Why are you buying luxury brand clothes? Why not? I can buy whatever I want with my salary. Yes, you can. But you said we would share expenses like rent and groceries, and you haven't paid. When will you pay? I'll pay when I can. Isn't your priority wrong? If you can afford luxury clothes, then pay the rent. Danny retorted to my words. What's the problem? It's fine, isn't it? To me, these clothes are more important. Your salary is also part of our income, so you paying the entire rent is the same as us paying it together. I was amazed at how self-centered his statement was. It's not the same. I'm making an effort to save while you just buy whatever you want. Don't you care about our home? Danny and I had a big fight for the first time in a while. He stormed out of the house in rage. Maybe we both needed some time to cool down. After Danny left, I searched his room again. I found a receipt for a luxury brand bag for women in his desk drawer. The date was over a month ago. I had no memory of being given such a bag, and my birthday had passed 2 months before. At that time, we only enjoyed a meal at a slightly upscale restaurant. Moreover, I paid for it. I haven't received anything from Danny. I finally understood. Danny was probably giving gifts to another woman. That's why he didn't pay the rent and didn't contribute to living expenses. So, I hired a detective agency. About 3 days later, Danny returned home as if nothing had happened. However, I couldn't greet him as I used to. I didn't say welcome back or talk to him. Danny, sensing my anger, didn't try to start a conversation either. In my mind, I was thinking of ending our marriage depending on the results from the detective agency. About 2 weeks later, I received the results from the agency. As expected, Danny was having an affair. Moreover, the other woman was his former girlfriend. Before marriage, he mentioned having a long-term relationship with a woman, and it seemed she was the one he was having an affair with. The affair matched the period last year when Danny became cold toward me. He had been cheating since then. I was filled with rage. The sudden kindness from Danny, who had been cold, was probably to make me bear all household expenses, allowing him to freely spend his salary, pretending our marriage was good. I was skillfully used by him. This was something I couldn't forgive. I decided to take revenge on him. In the midst of this, Danny came home from work and made an unbelievable proposal. My parents are going to live in this house, so can you go back to your parents' home? What are you talking about? I don't understand. After our fight, I went back to my parents' house, and they told me to break up with such a woman. They said they were moving to this apartment and suggested we live together. So, I've decided to live here with my parents and you need to move out. I couldn't believe what Danny was saying. Even though I contribute $2,000 for monthly living expenses, what will he do without me? However, this turned out to be a good thing for me. Understood? Perhaps our relationship can't be repaired. If that's the case, I'll leave. When I said that, Danny laughed happily and said, I'll come back after you leave, and left. The next day, I quickly contacted a recycling company. Since he was plotting something, I had my ways too. A few days later, I had the recycling company assess all the furniture and appliances and sold everything. It turned out to be an unexpected windfall of hundreds of dollars. Then, I packed my belongings and went back to my parents' house. Danny had prepared a divorce form, so I signed it and submitted it to the city office promptly. This meant Danny and I would then lead completely separate lives. When I told Danny the moving out was done, he said cheerfully, "Oh, that was fast. Let's both be happy," and hung up. However, a few days later, Danny called me again. "Hey, what do you mean by this? We're already divorced. Do you need something? Where did all the furniture and appliances go? You can't just take them. It's my right to do whatever I want with my belongings, isn't it? All the furniture and appliances in the house are what I've been using since my single days. I've already had them taken away by the recycling company. So, I have to buy new ones then. Do you have that kind of money? You're kidding me. I work too, you know? Well, but that apartment costs $1,400 per month in rent, right? Plus, living expenses for 3 adults will be around $2,200 to $2,300 a month. It costs that much. Yes, I've been paying about that much all along. That I can afford that with my salary. Maybe. Well, no more money for your girlfriend then. What? I know everything about your affair with your ex-girlfriend. I'll be claiming compensation for that, so be prepared. I'll contact you through a lawyer. Bye. Wait a minute. I hung up without listening to him. Afterward, through a lawyer, I proceeded with the process of claiming compensation from Danny and his affair partner. Danny was ordered to pay a compensation of $30,000 but ended up in debt as he had no savings. As expected, he soon found it difficult to pay the living expenses and rent, and it seemed he had to leave the apartment. His parents' house had already been sold, so they had no place to return to and are now living in a small, cheap apartment as a family of 3. When I was contributing financially, there was a sense of economic ease. But after the divorce, Danny was left with nothing, and his relationship with his affair partner couldn't be maintained. As a result, it seems our relationship naturally came to an end. Danny begged me for reconciliation, crying, but I ignored everything and even blocked his calls. The compensation is to be paid in installments, and if the payments are delayed, his salary might be garnished, so it's unlikely he will miss any payments. Meanwhile, I plan to commute from my parents' house and start saving the money I couldn't save before. The marriage was a failure, but I take it as a lesson and intend to use this experience in my future life.